Okay, been doing some practicing with our scallop design. This is the finished pattern piece. This is the size we want them to end up at. It measures approximately 21.5 centimetres from left to right, and the height is 10.5 centimetres from top to bottom. It actually took quite a few hours to measure this right, because we're hoping that this is going to match up with the seam of the skirt, and the same the other side of the skirt as well. So fingers crossed that this is going to work out. But these are our scallops. I've cut out more templates here, and basically we've been drawing around them. You can just see the chalk line here. You come up to a point there, and then so on all the way around the skirt until you reach the end. Now when you get to the end of the skirt, obviously this is going to become a seam, and you'll probably want the usual 1 centimetre seam allowance if that's what you use. So we've had to finish our last scallop about here. So this is actually going to be our skirt edge. Just ignore this because this slightly overlapped a little bit. So that'll basically be your edge. And the same for the other side of the skirt as well. Next, I recommend getting some more pins and pinning down your lining piece a bit better, because next we're going to be sewing right where the dotted line is. Now when we get to the corners, I'm going to be coming up and then just coming across 2 little stitches, and then turning the fabric in the other way around in the machine with the needle still in place, and then coming down the other side. And when we come back up again, I will be showing this after I've done it a bit better, but you don't come up to a point and then leave your needle in and then come back down. You need to come across a little bit, and you'll see why later. Right, I hope you can see well here what I've done. I've sewn round where my chalk marks were for my scallops. Done that all the way around the skirt. Now, as I said earlier, you'll want to come up to here on the sewing machine, keep your needle in, pull your foot up and turn your fabric around and come 2 little stitches across. Then keeping your needle in the fabric again, obviously turn it back round to come down the other way. And the reason we do this is because I'll show you on this example here, is when you come to turn it inside out the right way, it will just help your fabric lie that little bit better. Plus, if you were to come up to a point and then cut into it later on, you might end up with a hole, and plus it'll be a very weak point as well. So that's why you come across just a little bit and you don't come up to that point. So basically that's where we are at the moment. The next thing to do is to start cutting around your scallops. You cut 1 centimetre out from where your sewing line is, and then you stop about there. Don't cut all the way to the top, like so. Basically do that for all the way around. Next we want to start clipping our curves like so, and I've just done a couple here as an example. You don't need to cut every centimetre, 2 centimetres, you can sort of cut every 3 or 4 centimetres. And when you get to this part, I've just quickly shown you here, you want to cut a straight line up to roughly there, 0.5 centimetre from the edge of your sewn line at this point. so don't cut right the way to the top. Okay, and you'll do that for every single one. Next, after clipping, you can start turning your whole skirt inside out.
Or even the right way around.
The right way around. Okay, once we've turned it the right way out, and you can see the nice seams that you've created on your scallops, you'll then want to roll the edge and make sure that your lining isn't overlapping the front. So in other words, it's not coming forward over. You want to make sure that your outer fabric is rolling out and underneath, and that the lining just comes in a few millimeters, because you don't really want your lining fabric to be showing on the outside of your scallops. When you get to pulling in the I'll say corners here, but I don't really know what to call it, you want to pull this as tight as possible. It can be slightly tricky and you might need to jiggle it about a little bit to pull your lining up inside tight, but it can be done. I will then be giving it a press with the iron on every single one to make sure they are totally flat. And this is what the skirt looks like now. I've still left all my pins in, even though I have given it a press with the iron, and underneath it looks something like this, all the way around. With a different colour fabric that she has at the bottom of her skirt, I'm using this lightweight crepe fabric in colour Hyacinth, which I'll show you in a moment where I bought it from. For the fabric on my skirt, I'm using this company, Calico Lane. That's calicolane.co.uk. The name of the fabric was Hyacinth Crepe. It has a very, very slight stretch on it, hence the 3% spandex it mentions. But it's a very nice crepe. A bit more lightweight than the heavier crepe I've used on the skirt. To do the bottom piece of fabric, I'm going to use the same pattern pieces that I used to line the skirt with, as shown earlier in the video, except we will need to do 2 of each one. Okay, so we had the front, which was cut on a fold. We're going to be doing 2 of these on a fold. Now we had the back sections, which was, if you remember, were slightly shorter. These don't need to be cut on a fold, but we will need 2 for each side, so that will be 4 altogether of the back sections. Okay, I've now cut up my pieces. As you can see, we've cut them a little bit extra than we need to. As you know from earlier, this was 15 centimetres wide, and I've added 2 centimetres at the top and just a bit more on the side. And the only reason why I've done this is just to be on the safe side a little bit, just to give myself a little bit more fabric, just in case. And the reason that we're cutting it on the curve again at the bottom is that it will give it a nicer finish and drape to the bottom of the skirt, as opposed to if you just cut out a rectangular strip of fabric, it might hang a bit straighter at the bottom. So that's why we've curved it to go with the curve of the skirt, just so it will hang that little bit nicer when your skirt is finished. Okay, I'm just in the process now of making sure that fabric strips I've just cut out all line up on the skirt. At the moment I've just put the front sections to side sections, just pin them in with the 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, and I'm just making sure that it lines up with the seam on the skirt. I can see why it was important that I decided to leave a bit extra on the ends, just in case it accidentally fell a bit short and I wanted it to come out just a little bit more. Okay, now we've measured our seams to make sure they match the skirt. You now want to sew them together on both sections, as you can see here. So basically we've, as I say, cut out 2 of each. I want to give your seams a good press with the iron. Okay, next up you want to match your 2 sections together. So making sure you place good side to good side. You then want to pin all the way across the bottom, making sure everything matches up. And then, although you may not want to do this, but I personally wanted to do this, I wanted to tack all the way across the bottom of the entire piece. And next I will be sewing 1 centimetre up from the bottom, roughly where I put the pins. Okay, next, because it's on a curve, we have to clip it every so often, going around the entire piece, roughly about 10 centimetres apart, and of course being careful not to cut through your sewing line. Okay, the next thing to do is to turn it the right way out with your seam to the outside, and being very careful, you need to iron the whole thing flat by rolling the edge and making sure your lining doesn't peek through or roll to the outside. You want it just underneath, and as you go it might be helpful, as you can see we've put some pins in. We've now ironed the whole piece, but we're going to keep these in place to hold it as I work around attaching this to the whole bottom of the skirt, and it will just make life a little bit more easier as well. Okay, I'm just in the middle of pinning my skirt to the edge of the fabric. Like so. I've decided to leave a 2 centimetre gap at the bottom, like so, and that's on every scallop all the way round. Okay, next I've been doing is, I've started at the other end of the skirt, I'm nearly at the end here. But basically, to attach your scallops to your piece of fabric, you take the lining of your scallops that we lined earlier on in the video, take a section of that and then thread it through a little bit of the fabric underneath. Pull your needle through, then pull it tight. That way you can't see any stitching on the outside. Let's do it again one more time. Okay, here we have a practice run of the embroidery. We're doing it on the machine. This is our other sample piece. Okay, just a quick progress shot so far. All we've done at this point is the main flowers themselves. Sorry the lighting isn't brilliant. It is very early in the morning, but yeah. Now that we've done most of the embroidery, at the back seam we've actually sewn that up to as far as the top of the flower here where the little dot is, so that we can embroider that. The rest has been left open because we're going to put an invisible zip in. Okay, I've now sewn my invisible zip in. Now because there's lots of tutorials out there for putting invisible zips in, they'll probably explain it maybe better than what we could do. We decided to skip that, so I advise just doing some practicing with invisible zipper if you've never done that before, and just look up some tutorials on it and maybe just do some practice. As I say, maybe I've done my zip. But next we've got to take that edge, fold it under, and then I've got to fold that under again, like so, like that basically. Okay, I don't know if you can see here, but what you want to do as you're turning your ends in is you have a piece of zip here sticking up. You want to sandwich that between here and here. So that will turn in, and then the two will go together like that. And then you're going to catch stitch it in place so it looks like this other side after. The catch stitching is exactly the same as I did on the bottom of the skirt with the scallops when I was catching a bit of the lining and a bit of the outer fabric, so you don't go through to the other side. So you go right across the end here and then just down a little bit to about there, and this is just loose. So that should be what it looks like when it's finished. Okay, now I've finished doing that part on both sides. What we want to do is, you can see how this is still lying loose, and at the moment it risks keep coming up and you don't really want that, so we've got to anchor this seam. And as this skirt has worked out so well, and this seam on the band matched the seam on the skirt so well, I'm able to just fold that over, and here you've got two options. You can either turn up the end and just catch stitch it to there, or what I'm going to do is from the outside is go through the seam doing little tiny stitches to catch it flat, so then the whole thing then should lie reasonably flat, and you'll do that on the same other side as well. And now the completed skirt.